Well, here in Germany, a new law requiring men between 17 and 45 to get military approval for extended stays abroad is prompting widespread debate. The law, which went into effect in January, could affect millions of people. It requires men of military age to get permits from Germany's armed forces for travel, work, or study abroad that exceeds 3 months. The new requirement is part of legislation aimed at increasing active duty soldiers. Mandatory military service was suspended in Germany in 2011. The new provision went largely unnoticed until a local newspaper called attention to it this week. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now by our political correspondent, Giulia Saudelli. It's a curious story, Giulia. What's it all about?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we need to take a little bit of a step back, and we have to look at this law that came into effect in Germany on January 1st of this year. And this is a law introducing a voluntary military service. That means that young men, when they turn 18, they have to fill out a questionnaire answering questions on their fitness, on their physical fitness, and on their willingness to join the army. Now, this is not any kind of mandatory military service, but as this local newspaper, the Frankfurter Rundschau, looked into over the last few days, there was a clause in this law that talked about something different, and no one had really noticed it or looked into it for the last few months, even though there was a lot of debate on this law happening. And this clause says that German men between the ages of 18 and 45 have to apply for a permit, basically, from the armed forces if they plan to leave the country for more than 3 months. And now this previously was the case for situations where the country was in grave danger. For example, that there was a heightened threat to security in Germany, or if Germany was under armed attack. But now this is going to be the case all the time, also when there is no threat.
Yeah, it's really hard to wrap your mind around this, that people are just waking up to this law now. It's been on the books for a while. Germans famously love to travel, and a lot of young people spend months abroad. That's not that uncommon, or study abroad or work abroad. So what does this mean in practice for young people in Germany?
Yeah, and these are exactly the cases where this would happen if someone's planning a backpacking trip for a longer time, or maybe someone gets a job abroad. They would have to get in touch with the armed forces. A lot of media have reached out to the Defense Ministry and have asked for a clarification on how that would work. And the Defense Ministry has explained that because the military service is voluntary, it would be basically automatic that the permission to leave would be granted. So
they have to ask for it.
They still have to ask for it, and that's because the army needs to know where men of fighting age are in case of a big event, of a big threat, or of an armed attack. So it's basically for informational purposes. And the Defense Ministry also said that they realize that the measure is far-reaching. It does encroach on the liberty of people to basically travel or do what they want with their lives. And they are planning to develop a set of guidelines on how to make this reporting process more streamlined, less unbureaucratic, and for it to be less of a burden. But TBA, we don't really know yet when these guidelines are going to be ready.
So, I mean, there are two parts to this story, right? There's the actual mobility, question, people having to register if they're of military age when they go abroad for more than 3 months. But there's also the fact that nobody seemed to really notice that this law had come into force, even though it's been on the books now for months. What are people in Germany saying about this? How are political parties responding?
Well, we've seen a lot of debate in the media in the last few days about this specific clause that was in the law. And I imagine a lot of people have been debating this at home. It's been the Easter holidays, families are gathering, and I'm sure adults and younger people have debated this probably at Easter gatherings going out. Politicians, we've seen from the conservatives, who are the political group of the Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who have pushed for this measure. They say that given that the military service is voluntary, they are fine with a less bureaucratic reporting requirement, where basically people just have to let the army know that they're abroad without having to get an approval. But we've seen opposition parties calling for more clarification as to how this is meant to work. And from the left party, we've heard them saying that basically this law was just done clumsily because no one really knew that this clause was in there.
Quite a story. Giulia Saudelli, our political correspondent, thank you very much.
Well, Simon Marian Hoffmann is an artist and youth activist. He founded an initiative for getting young people involved in political decisions. Welcome to DW. Let's start with then your thoughts on this new law.
I'm very shocked. I was very shocked when I heard it last week, and a lot of young people in Germany, because it means a lot of impact in our freedom here. And we have already a lot of resistance and demonstrations against this military service here in Germany. The Gen Z stands up and they want to have self-determined lives. And therefore, it is really a shock. It feels a little bit like they're cheating on us because like nobody knows that will come in this way.
Why do you think that was? This is the weird thing about this story. This law has been in force since January. It was debated in Parliament, but we're only now 3-4 months later realising the import of what happened. Why do you think it got buried so successfully?
The focus was on the 17 years old that they have to take this military service, and all the olders, they was infected, and therefore they had no importance in this topic. And after this message came out, then we realized, okay, a lot of young people are involved to this, and there's a big resistance right now, and a lot of young people don't know what this means, and there's shock. And I think the youth will reply to that. We have already demonstrations here against this government and their decisions, because this is not the only topic where they are fighting against the next generation somehow. We have education problems, we have climate problems, a lot.
So you think we were all paying attention to the wrong thing when this thing happened. But let's go back to your first answer. You said that you were shocked that this was happening. My reading of it, and perhaps you know better, my reading of this is that essentially, yes, permission will be required, but really it'd have to be quite drastic for them to deny permission. So your life probably wouldn't change.
Yeah, but it's like the military. It feels like that my freedom is broken somehow. And a lot of young people don't want to have contact with the military, and that's a feeling of your living standard is reducing somehow, and the young people don't want to be affected in this war. More than 60% in Germany, they don't want to have this military service.
Can I just explore that a little more? Because I find it really interesting that there is this attitude amongst young people. You say that they don't want to have contact with the military service because, of course, we get an impression of Americans, for instance, as being very proud of their armed service, of their armed forces, with people in uniform being constantly thanked for their service by members of the public. Why is it so different here in Germany?
Germany started 2 world wars. And the young people, we know that. And we think also we have a responsibility in this crisis times where war is so near and so close. And we have these stories of our elders, grandpas and grandmas, and therefore we are not so into it, this game of military. And we also, I think Germany should be lead in a peaceful way, to do peace contracts, to do the diplomatic way. We are a democracy, and we need democratic ways to solve freedom and peace, and to raise up the military service is not in the thought, in the idea of the young people in Germany.
Thanks for talking us through that, Simon. Youth activist Simon Marian Hoffmann.